I'm feeling so vulnerable right now. You have no idea.
Yeah.
Why that man?
Yeah.
Can you help me understand, Tom?
Yes. Now, how would you help yourself? You said yesterday something very interesting.
What was that? What did I say yesterday?
Oh, I mean, it's a democratic process, so start whining about it. No, that's what you said.
Well, I was thinking about Trump from the point of, let's say, an archetype, who he is.
Right.
And I was thinking about his beginnings in New York and how always sort of he came off as this repulsive character to the let's say to the more lefty type of person. He was always the kind of the bad guy in my world, right? Because I come from that world. And even in the 80s, I just remember him being sort of like this this kind of obnoxious character, like, just somebody you love to hate. And then I was thinking when he was elected the first time and how I felt, and I had a real fear of, like, let's say, the hard right coming in. Uh-huh. And because Bannon and people like that were around, the real, scary kind of heavy hard right people seem to be in the shadows there somewhere, or that's the impression that I was, we were all given. And this time I don't feel like that at all. It's very interesting. I think I feel completely different about it. Mhm. How about you?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I made a list of things, we could talk about or I could talk about, but one of the things you alluded to was he was like a public figure in the United States since the 70s, 80s, and he appeared in, numerous movies and talk shows. And, at least from my view inside of the pond, it was like he was a staple of American culture, like since
Hmm.
the 80s. And this video went around when he, with his people, rushed to 9/11, help out there. And I mean, it's like, half as a media gag, but half, I would guess, in a sincere way.
He's
And
the
so it's like,
all-American archetype, basically, in every
yeah, and then
possible way. So it's interesting. It's like he is the all-American archetype. He's just the quintessential of what you can love and hate about America. Both, in fact. I find him more sympathetic than I did in the past. But I just think he is America. That's what I think at this
and
moment.
America loves like these kinds of stories, like
Yeah.
a comeback story. And I mean, it wasn't even a close election. So it's like, uh, it's more like America's trying to find itself again.
Yeah, and I was thinking about also there was a comment on Twitter that we're back in a Hegelian world. Our friends are all Hegelians here, in the sense that there's history now. Like,
I mean,
there's this
Hegelian.
movement of the end of history, right? All the way up, and that liberalism was supposed to be the end of history. Uh-huh. And then you have this kind of assassination attempt, and and it's like history's back, so to speak. Whether you like it or not, history is still happening, in a
I don't
sense.
know what you mean by that, really.
Well, Hegel talked about the absolute of history and the movement of history, and then all the efforts to sort of deconstruct history and say we can be whatever we want, and that history's over because this liberalism is the ultimate summation of everything. It's just prosperity, et cetera, but nothing. We've gotten rid of all our myths, right? The mythology is over, right? And we're in a world that is suddenly a post mythological, a post historical, post kind of Hegel's grand narrative of history. But we're back in there's a grand narrative of history. It's kind of even Kennedy being there. There's something about that is on a continuum of something. There's something about all of this is that it's intensely mythological. It's intensely It's not even about Trump the person. It's just it seems very mythological to me what's going on. Almost almost fatalistic. Like I think of you know, what's his name? James Hillman wrote this book about character and fate and how yeah, how Trump seems to have this kind of fate. You know, people don't like that, but he seems to have this unavoidable sort of movement in his character towards being what he is. And
Well, I mean, what I can get behind is what you say with the mythological aspect, because I was thinking about, all the myth, from medieval ages, and how a king is chosen, and then there are
mm,
these stories about wielding a sword and pulling a sword out of a stone, and and so there are, many people try, and then they fail because they're not equipped to deal with the ultimate power until the one comes who does. And so I was thinking. I was listening to this interview, at least partly, between Trump and Rogan a couple of days ago. And so he talked about, the first time he came into office, and, he was kind of, all the Washington basically was standing still, and this whole military apparatus kind of secured that he had like a safe transition because from the plane to the White House. And so it was like the seminal moment where like the whole machinery of American politics culminated in this moment of power. And so this is something that not everybody can handle. I mean, it's like, it's not that America is just the most powerful military apparatus in the world. It's like the most powerful military apparatus in history. And so it's condensed in one person. And so you have two people basically. You have Trump and you have Harris. And to me, like from an outside perspective view, she seemed like a nervous person, not equipped to deal with that power, and was overcompensating with an alcohol problem that I don't know if she has, but she seemed to me like somebody who was kind of whimpering and kind of nervous to deal with that kind of power. But he didn't, because he did this already, and so he was like, in a mythological kind of way, signaling, on a pre-modern, pre-rational level that, independently of how he wields the power, he can wield the power, and he
yeah,
can wield this. And so that is like, that kind of instills trust in like a primordial trust, like because a trust that Kamala Harris couldn't project, with her cackling laugh and
yeah.
her weird stuff that she was saying, and it's like on
And
that
I
logical level, I can understand what you're saying.
and I agree with you, and I'm surprised about that because but again, if you look at it in a mythological way, it's the clown or the fool or the the bumbling. He always comes off as being a kind of just a bumbling person, but actually he ends up triumphing in the end. So it has almost it has that mythological arc to it in a sense, because he he's made fun of, he, and he's ridiculed by by all the people with power that be just relentlessly, and then he wins. It's like if you are this meditation term that you are what you pay attention to. So I would say all of the people on the progressive left, let's say, were obsessed with Trump for the past 10 years. They were absolutely obsessed with him as a villain, right?
Right.
And of course he's going to win because all their attention is on him, you
All
know.
right. Yeah, 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 yeah. Mm.
Of course he's going to win. It's so
I
obvious. I mean, I
yeah.
called this. I talked to my friends. They were like, "Oh, Kamala's gonna, win. And it's gonna be a big surprise." And da da da. No, because the silent majority, is always there waiting. The people in the middle, and so in the first election, he won the right, and then this election, he won all those people in the middle, the silent majority folks. He just who are too afraid to even speak about them in their workplace, because he's the archetypal devil to their milieu.
Yeah, but not only that, also, lots of leftists and liberals and dirtbag left people that kind of knew that, this strange, intention to bring to eschew, let's say, education and healthcare system and climate politics, in favor of, basically the rainbow flag and wokeism, that doesn't fly. And so they knew that that
That's
there's no
over.
real left and that there is no real left and progressive way, showed off by the Democrats. And so, he won those people over. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like Robert Kennedy is a Democrat and Tulsi Gabbard is a Democrat. And it's like, I guess there's a reason why they chose to be running mates, except for, that they want to power themselves.
Well, it's interesting, yeah, that half his team is democratic, that he won those people over. He has a way of, let's say, seducing people, which is, and he has also has, I think in a way, him as a person is almost irrelevant. Like it's more like the people that he's able to kind of bring around him. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever you think of Vance, the guy's impressive. The guy's articulate. He's smart. He's young. He's like, okay, I get that. I get why people like him. Whereas Tim, the other vice president, was sort of a bumbling kind of wannabe. Like they tried to make him attractive to Midwestern people, and he couldn't even shoot a gun. So nobody's going to take him seriously. It's just a question of what the silent majority feels is a little bit more authentic. And
Yeah.
also, I think the other reason he won is that he was on Joe Rogan, and those people don't take Joe Rogan seriously at all. They don't take podcasting, the big podcast. They don't take Jordan Peterson seriously. They don't take any of those people seriously. And that's a big mistake because from Marshall McLuhan that the people who have the media, the newest cutting edge media, always win, right? Kennedy won because of television.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
He won. Trump won because of Twitter and YouTube. Obviously, and Spotify. So it's Twitter and YouTube. If the medium is a message, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify beats the New York Times any day. And I read the New York Times all the time, and it's just a bunch of lies, and everybody knows it. It's like, oh yeah, the race is really tight. Yeah, right. Yeah, and then there's all these beautiful pictures of Kamala and Trump as being, this withered old dirtbag man, and so it's so obviously biased, obviously not in tune with what's going on, and so. They don't like Joe Rogan and they don't like Jordan Peterson and they don't like all these people, but these are the people that are using the media in the right way, and that's why they're winning. And
Well, I
again,
think
I'm
it's
not even arguing good or evil here. I'm arguing the position beyond or prior to good or evil. It's like, how does somebody win? You win by capturing people's, not their minds, because nobody really thinks about these things. They just go by their, unconscious biases and tribal identifications, and they're not thinking. They're just being captured. That's what the world is. It's like it's like the if you pay attention to something, what you are, what you pay attention to. So America has been paying attention to Trump so intensely for the past so many years. So America is Trump,
Yeah,
and
the interesting thing is, going back to the mythological aspect, because I was recently watching this video from Hans Möller. I interviewed him once from the YouTube channel Carefree Wandering, and he talked about, the religious aspect of media, basically, and talked about
mm,
America living has basically like two religious planets. And so it's found it interesting because we're talking about, postmodern and spirituality and religiosity. And it's like it's fairly obvious that the media apparatus, and that what you're talking about is like draws heavily on these substructures of the psyche, because there is a quasi-religious aspect, to the democratic narrative and the Republican narrative in a kind of way. And for
Mhm.
me, just again looking just from the outside, what the Democrats are offering is basically, the religion, the oppression Olympics and the oppression, religion, basically. But this is no way to go, like, hopefully into the future, basically. And I mean, as strange as it sounds with all this "Make America Great Again," at least it is somewhat a positive message. Let's make something,
Yeah.
It's like, and so it's like, I think that speaks to a very, basic a structure of the psyche of the, working class people that are facing real problems, economic wise and healthcare wise. I just read, that, the chance to go broke in Europe because of health issues is like 0.001%. That
Yeah.
because the healthcare system is set up so good that nobody goes broke if they have like a health crisis. The chance that you go, broke in the United States is what, when you're sick, like 30-40%. So it's like nobody's there to catch you when you fall. And
Yeah.
so it's like these are the real life problems of the people. And so, you know, there is a chance that, everything will turn out better than it was before, despite of what legacy media is telling you, you know?
Yeah, well, normally the Democrats are the ones that are supposed to be for healthcare and all these kind of things, right? The Republicans are the evil Bush people, kind of they're the bad guys. But everything is kind of is very upside down. It's flipped in a way.
Robert
Um,
F. Kennedy is now the guy who's in charge of, of health in
well,
the
I want to
United States.
talk about him because every kind of interview I've seen of him and heard him talk. He seems to be a very intelligent, you're really, let's say, the kind of person who always takes the upper ground and also backs up his ideas. He might be a bit of a conspiracy theorist on some level, but on another level, he's full of information and facts and well-researched ideas, and he's articulate and everything about him I like so far, and I could be totally wrong. And I think I would vote for them only because he for the health reason at the moment, because the drug administration, it's so corrupt, the food is so corrupt, and he's an actual environmentalist, not a sort of greenwashing environmentalist who thinks about these issues very, very deeply. So I couldn't care less about Trump, but I like Kennedy so far. And of course, everything I've seen in the New York Times is that he's a very evil man. And if you look back to 2019, he was the darling of the environmental movement of the
Yeah.
progressive. Everything about him was like he was a heroic figure, a beautiful man, and he had some ideas about vaccines that a few people didn't like, and so they've relentlessly tried to do some sort of character assassination about him, and it's not working because whenever he opens his mouth, he's completely reasonable. It just doesn't work. So that's my feeling. Again, I could be wrong. But
No, but I mean, it's like this constant accusation of being, half of America being Nazis and fascists. I can't believe that. I mean, historically, it's kind of untrue, because I always feel like, nobody, everybody who uses the word fascism hasn't looked into what that word and what that movement originally means. And it's like I can't see this happening in the United States, because fascism is a very particular way of dealing with state issues. It's the fusion of military and politics. It's a
sure, and
way of.
everybody knows Trump's not a fascist. He might be a somewhat of an authoritarian, but a kind of weak
No, but
authoritarian because he
that's the
always,
accusation being leveled at him and
yeah,
the population on a constant way by the legacy media, and you wonder, like, why? It's like, that's historically not accurate.
because there's no journalism in there anymore. It's all smear campaigns. They're smearing Kennedy. They're They do anything to win, and they do everything to lose. If the Democratic Party wanted to get back on its feet, it would renounce its ridiculous wokeism. It would go on all the podcasts. It would go. They'd go on. All they had to do was go on Joe Rogan, probably, and I don't. It's just that's a thing. There's a snobism there that people don't like, and the snobism just is turns people off intensely. So that's when the silent majority comes in and sees these people they're a bunch of snobs, and they're fragile, right? They're weeping and crying on camera. They're narcissistic. They can't handle. There was a picture of there's a meme that I saw this morning on Twitter about the woman who took off her clothes in Iran. Okay, that's oppressive, right? That's a place of intense, and that woman is a hero, right? Right? All these people weeping and crying. It's like, what's wrong with you? Fuck off. Stop crying. I mean, you have even if you don't like Trump, just stop crying on social media. It's undignified, you know. If you want to, personally, I'd be happy if the Democratic Party kind of like rebuilt itself, and I voted for them all the way up until this election, right? But this one was a little different. I felt like, okay, some epoch of hypocrisy, of wokeness, of liberal tears and all that is over. It's gone. It's done. You have to try
No, it goes
something
in
else.
overdrive, yes. But I think, the issue is that, if you are like resorting, just on people calling deplorables and garbage and Nazis and fascists, then you're not able, to look at reality of what it is. And then you're not, able to present a candidate that is able to stand for authentic and sincere values that go into the direction of being progressive and healthcare for everybody and better education. And so, like, my feeling is that the problem is that the Democratic Party is just at the moment just a lying bunch of people that are caught up in these kinds of counter narratives and whatever, but are not able to look at reality of what it is and what is required to deal with the issues at hand. I mean, climate change, and then there is like the AI transformations that will revolutionize like everything on the planet. And so, like, if you're caught up in just like labeling people fascists, then you're not able to look at society and what society actually needs. But this is like, it's like you can't just run a program on being like a counter movement against Trump. You need to propose something authentically of value that
Yeah.
it's like what you say. It's like if you give Trump your energy, then of course he will win. But if you propose like a true progressive goal, for the betterment of society and to betterment, not to deal with, crisis like they did with COVID. Like, imagine like a new crisis like global scale would happen, like in terms of a new virus or AI or whatever, or what's like, you don't want the Democrats at the moment to deal with these issues because they're just lying.
Well,
Because they
they're
have no,
bureaucrats, basically. I mean,
yeah, but
they
they
might
have
be
no
very
right.
intelligent bureaucrats. They
They
might
have
be
no
like,
vision. That's what I mean,
yeah,
Andrew. They
yeah,
have
yeah, yeah. You
no
you want a
vision
bunch of
to.
weirdos to like the guys. Like, there was something about the Trump team being like the X-Men or something, right? Because they're all kind of, you know, they're a bit they're kind of outsiders, right? And normally you wouldn't want the outsiders and weirdos if you're in a normal kind of society. I don't think you would want outsiders and weirdos. You'd want the good bureaucrats to run the society. But I think right now we're in a time where you need more than bureaucracy. You need sort of some wild things to happen. Um, and yeah, and I don't see any of that. I think the Democratic Party just became the party of good opinion, right? That's all it was. It was just the good opinion of what is it's just good opinion. It was like the super ego party or something. It's like good and evil and good and bad and and right and wrong. But as you say, it didn't have it had zero constructive kind of vision. it was all social justice or identity politics or you know but it wasn't, oh, what are we going to build, what are we going to make, what are we going to do, with America or whatever. So I guess if the lesson that those people could learn is, you know develop a constructive narrative, right? Don't just whine and cry and complain about the world, especially if you're like, I don't know. I mean, that sounds very harsh, and maybe
No,
that
but
sounds
that's what I mean with oppression
unkind
politics.
because there are people who are, poor and their life sucks, and but it's more like the tears of the elites that are very disgusting somehow. Like it's so disgusting to see movie stars and people in Hollywood and Taylor Swift and Robert De Niro and all those people. It's so disgusting to see those people crying, it makes no sense at all. There's no dignity. It's like, okay, have some dignity, make a constructive narrative, and then the Democrats will be back, and these horrible Republicans, well, you can crush them, and they can become a caricature of something. And but there's another thing. I'm sorry I'm talking so intensely here, but I've been drinking too much coffee and thinking about this all morning. I think, I think that the progressives are stupid to have totally abandoned religion. So I think that's another reason. I think America's an intensely religious society, and so that's another reason. And I don't say that's good. I'm not saying good or bad again. I'm saying there's a lot of conservative Christians in America, and some of them are pretty, awful. But but you can't just have a nice progressive agenda and ignore that whole kind of faith-based society. It just that's where progressivism doesn't work, by trying to sort of believe that it's gone beyond religion in some kind of way. Maybe me and you will slightly disagree about that, but
Yeah, because I think, that what they're both are offering are religions, you
well,
know?
there's religion that's based in religion, and then there's religion that's based in wokeism, and that's a pseudo-religious ideology. It's not based in like 3,000 years
Well,
of.
for the psyche, it doesn't make a difference where it comes from, as long as the mythological structures are addressed of the psyche, you know? So it's like in German you would say Ersatzreligion. It's what you said, it's not true. It's like it's not the real religion, but it serves the function of religion. And so it's like it's a substitute religion, you would say in English, and so
Yeah, that's what
politics.
I'm saying. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'd say that the Democrat, by pretending they have no religion, are unconsciously driven by a substitute
Yes, yes,
religion with all kinds
obviously.
of like things you're supposed to say, and like, for example, follow the science or something, all these sort of different kind of catechisms and dogmas, and which are just as oppressive as let's say the Catholic Church ever was, and perhaps even more so because they're not even aware of themselves being a religion, you know. So
My issue just is, from the most banal kind of, level of analysis. It's like the conservatives are there to conserve, whatever traditional values there are, and to
yeah.
protect, the economic and ideological and religious structures, let's say. And the progressives are there to enable us to deal with coming crisis. They're progressives. They have to look into the future. They have to have a vision, and they have to find ways, to build new structures. So we're set up with a new, like in a Sloterdijkian sense, immune system. So when the next crisis comes, we're able to deal with it. And so when Corona told us anything, globally, we hadn't had, not only biologically bad immune systems, but also socially and ideologically. And so it's like, now you can't expect that from the conservatives to provide, because it's historically the functions of the Democrats and the progressives to go out, to be anti-fragile,
Well,
to
not in
try out
America, because the
to
Puritans were
try out
the.
new stuff, and so
Yeah.
they're not fulfilling their evolutionary role. And so that's my main issue, and again, like one last sentence, so that the Democrats were just looking towards Trump and what Trump is doing and not looking, into a future like let's try something new, and so
Yeah.
that's why they lost.
But I think America's a little different because the Puritans who came to America were the progressives. They were the ones that left the European society to start a new world, right? So there's this weird sort of Puritanism and progressivism in America. So it's actually the Puritans who are the more progressive, right? Rather, whereas in Europe it's different. I think in Europe, I think the progressives are. I think that what you're saying is true, but I don't think it's necessarily true in United States
Maybe.
because I never think that progressives in the United States were always kind of Puritans on some level. They were always sort of Bible thumping Protestants, even if they were talking about civil rights or it's much more Protestant and biblical and
Yeah.
than Europe, which has this whole sort of had a more grounded philosophical tradition that wasn't completely so the progressives in Europe were actually progressives, whereas in America
Yeah,
it's
well,
all
that's kind
inside
of,
out somehow.
yeah, that's true. That's completely true. I'm always having this conversation when I'm talking about Americans that their left and the European left are not the same thing. The
Mhm.
European left isn't even on the political scale of the American spectrum of politics. It's just like it's our left is left to their radical left, I would say, because it's an authentic leftist progressive, movement that it's like if you look at Sarah Wagenknecht in Germany or irgendwie these people, you wouldn't find any of these people, that actually look at, how can you improve healthcare and how can you, this society and move in a direction that is more just. You can't find these, expression of leftism in the United States. You can't.
Maybe, yeah, yeah, perhaps, yeah. But yeah, coming back to Trump and his character, again, I think people pay too attention to the person, right? That's always the mistake. Is a personality, a personality flaw, because he sort of comes off as this bumbling narcissist. Um, but it doesn't mean that he um doesn't have some kind of daemon or some kind of, let's say, power. Again, I think you put it well in the beginning of this conversation. He's somehow able to hold on to power, and that's a strange thing. That's a bizarre thing. He's a bizarre person. He's not what people think he is, and he's no more. He's not better than people think he is. He's not worse either. He's just sort of. I think he's kind of he has the collective spirit somehow.
I wouldn't be surprised, Andrew, and I talked with a friend about this yesterday. I don't know, it's like I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if after the next 4 years, and he's still in office, and that might not be the case because of cognitive decline and Vance coming into office. But let's assume that he will leave, the 4 years are over, and he will leave, leave the presidency. And so it's like there is a good chance that he will leave office as a well-beloved president.
Yeah, kind of like Reagan. I remember Reagan. Everybody hated him in the 80s. Like everybody I knew hated Reagan, and then I was like, at his funeral, they talked about him as the greatest conservative president, this wonderful guy, and da 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 da. da. It's very strange because
Because he has nothing to lose anymore. It's like he has nothing, he has won everything. He's like
yeah,
he has nothing to prove. That's what I want to say. He just can flow on a 4 year kind of thing and be constructive and make some good changes. And I'm not saying that it's likely, but there is a chance that at the end everybody would say, well, it wasn't so bad. It was not only as bad as we expected, it was actually pretty good, you
yeah. Well,
know?
he kind of delegates. That's the thing. It might be interesting to look at his team and not him. Like, forget about him. Just look at his team, and people he delegates power to. So he's obviously not like Mussolini or a dictator, like all the lefties say, because he finds people and delegates it, and he shape shifts, and he's like, oh, this person is good in one moment, and then he fires somebody, and then he gets somebody new in. He's kind of a he's just like, the Chinese king is who faces south rules the kingdom by doing nothing. So I think he doesn't him in his I don't think he's smart enough in his own mind. I don't think he's a genius or that smarter, but he's good at delegating things to other people. Like I think his choices of a team are very interesting this time. So it'd be interesting if his team kind of becomes the presidency rather than him, because he has Elon Musk, for fuck's sake, and he has another person who people seem to think is either the devil or a savior, or right. People have such polarized views about Elon Musk. And then the Vance guy seems very smart, and then Robert Kennedy is just, again, there was all of this hubris going on Twitter, and then you see Robert Kennedy and he says something like has nothing to do with any of the social commentary, just to do with the health and
Yeah.
always taking the higher ground. He seemed like a digna anyway. So there's this whole team around him. It's not even him. And I think like a good president would be that, right? It would be not about the person. The person would be irrelevant.
Right.
It would be because it would be how the person sacrifices himself to his team, and then the team to the whole. So it is almost like a monarchy where the queen has no actual real, say in what goes on, but is sort of just doing nothing, and then the people around do the stuff. So I'm not making an argument for monarchy or monarchism or a Yarvin argument or anything like that, but
No, but the interesting thing that you're, and I think you alluded to that, a couple of my minutes before. It's just like if in that sense, the separator is always the connector. And if we look at America not as, two teams and two colors and two religions, but one. And so it's like and you look at America as if it were like, let's say, one psyche talking, to a therapist, and the therapist would say, okay, so why would you send a very weak Democratic candidate into the field into the first place if you don't want to lose? And so
yeah.
it's like a therapist would say, maybe the underlying self wants Trump to be president, and therefore
Mhm.
it's sending like a very weak candidate. And so it's like actually, the American soul kind of. I mean, I'm very hopeful for America. America is always, we tend to think America of a, of a thing that is always divided, but America for me is always, also like a beacon of hope.
I like
Of
what Leonard Cohen says about America. He says it's the land of the best and the worst. You know, it's
Yeah, but
it's
what I mean is
it's
like
kind
it's
of
like
like that.
I don't see it necessarily as a bad thing. It's like if we are so accustomed to look at phenomena through lenses of integral theory, or metamodernism and stage theory. But if we put this aside and just look at America as something that wants something, in this case Trump, it's like. Maybe there is wisdom in that.
Well, as you were speaking, I was
You know
thinking
what?
that
Sorry, but you know what I mean? There's some wisdom in choosing that
yes,
way.
yes, this is what I was thinking when you're speaking, is that if you're, let's say, a Democrat, and I think I'm probably more of a Democrat than a Republican at heart anyway. At least my, yeah, on some level, like I'm not a Republican, although I don't really I wouldn't like to identify with either. But if you were, let's say if you're a Democrat and you're feeling kind of upset right now because your team didn't win, you know, think about it as like, okay, this is the best news ever, right? Because all of the flaws of the Democrat Party are there. They're on the table. We know what they are. We know what's wrong with the Democratic Party right now. We know that they're seduced by wokeism. They're completely ideological possessed. They've 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 become a narcissistic elite, all these things, right? So this is great for the Democratic Party, right? Trump's win is the best news ever for the Democratic Party, right? Because they can figure shit out and how to do it correctly the next
Yeah,
time.
that's true.
So the
Yeah,
next time there's an election, the Democratic Party will find somebody who is a bit more reasonable and stop trying to play the same games because those games don't work. And if you keep playing those same games, then you're just going to lose over and over and over and over again because those games are not working, you know.
that's a reality check. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I fully agree. It's like, okay, if you're a Democrat, celebrate this. Celebrate Trump. Fantastic. You know, first of all, if he's the devil, you know who the devil is. You know all the bad people are. You know he's that guy. And if he's not the devil, and maybe Trump is actually, in my view, probably more of a Democrat than even a Republican, and on some level, because he's like, 80s television guy, real estate dude. He's a New Yorker. He's not even a real Republican. He's not like the Bushes, for example,
Right.
He's a lot more open than the rest of the Republicans. He's just a clown that came in there and kind of stirred up the system, and it's great for both those. It's great for the Democrats. Yeah. That would
Yeah,
be
well,
my thesis here. Like if I was going to write an essay, I'd say Trump's win is the most fantastic news for the Democrats because now you guys can stop crying and figure out how to make a constructive vision, and and be in and have a real, let's say, Democratic Party instead of an ideologically possessed one.
yeah, I completely agree. It wasn't exactly what I meant, when I said, there's an inbuilt wisdom
Hmm.
in America choosing this president, because I meant this actually like in a therapeutic kind of way, but different, so it's like when when somebody is going to therapy and it's like complaining about why their life isn't working, and then through therapy, underlying motives are
Hmm.
being presented and brought to the surface. And I think it's like if the Democrats really wanted to win, they would have presented like a different candidate with a different vision, but they
Yeah.
didn't. So they kind of, willfully played in the hands because everybody knew, maybe because of the present, maybe because of future threats, for the moment, Trump and his team will be the better choice of dealing with all the crisis at hand,
Yeah.
and so like,
Yeah.
and that's what I mean with inbuilt wisdom in a kind of way. So it's like it's subliminal
Yeah.
and
Well,
some
it's when the old system is falling apart, or it's not working, it starts to collapse in on itself. It starts to self-destruct. So I think that, yeah, it makes the wrong choices, because because it's not, it has doesn't have it doesn't have its, I think it's not different from what you're saying, the psychological to the actual reality. I think it's just mirroring the same thing.
yeah,
So the immune system of the Democrat is party is giving strong signals, towards its own collapse, right?
yeah,
And then the immune system, and then there's strength in Trumpism. I don't even think Trumpism is republicanism. I think it's something else. I think it's some other thing. Then I don't even think it's the Republicans anymore. I think it's just a new. I think it's a third thing. So a third thing is arising out of two. Like I don't think the Republicans, like the old guard Republicans, have any vitality either. So I think both of those teams have no vitality. Like the Democrats have lost their vitality, and the old school Republicans have totally lost their vitality. And then there's this weird thing happening, and something else is going on. It's like the end of a chapter, or the end, like the immune system of both groups is kind of
yeah,
falling apart, and then there's a new sort of something being born. So that's what's kind of like I was thinking about, that it's the end of history. Um,
yeah.
History's back.
Yeah, and so and interesting is also to listen just to, voices from the left and dirtbag left and the radical, and, left in the United States. And so the sentiment that I feel, it is condensing to is that, the triumvirate of the, DNC, basically run by the Clintons and Obamas and Pelosi, that has to change because from them and their selection process of candidates that doesn't work. And so it's like, the Democratic Party has to change from deep inside. It's from deep inside its, um, core basically, and has to find new ways of addressing issues and finding new candidates basically,
And if it doesn't,
and
it's
basically
dead,
let
and it's
people
maybe
decide
over.
and let people decide what candidates they have and just shoving them into their faces, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, yeah, just so yeah, so the weird thing is that the elite bunch usually, Robert Kennedy was making this point. He said the Democratic Party used to be the party of the working class. And most of the people who voted for Democrats were working class people, like I think in 1960 or 70 or 80, all the way up to the 1980s. And they were the anti-war party, and they were sort of, and there's a switch where the Democrats have become the warmongers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The Democrats have become the warmongers. The Democrats have become the cabal of elite scumbags, you know, and the working class, the energy of the working people, the working class is now in the Republican camp. So there's the energy of like, so the Republicans almost have a Marxist, you know, thing to them, or at least it's the energy of the working class is like the energy of the silent. Again, it's the silent majority. We always think of the silent majority as a negative thing, but and it can be. It depends, right? It depends. The silent majority can be a positive thing if if what people are saying in the common everyday discourse is a bunch of bullshit. Um, you know. But if you're afraid to give your point of view, in your workplace, um, because it goes against good opinion and and it goes against your social world, then there's something wrong, and that's when I think the silent majority, which is like the unconscious or something, comes to the fore.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, again, I say I called this election because a lot of people were talking about, oh, it's going to be this Hegelian surprise. Everybody thinks it's Trump, but then it's going to be Kamala. But you just have to look at the silent majority. You look at what the ordinary people are saying, not what the good opinion is saying, but what people who are saying, whispering to each other, outside, in the outside of the area of good opinion, and
Yeah.
that's that's what's going to win.
Yeah. Also, I mean, the Democratic Party, as far as I understand, hijacked itself and its values when Bernie was running, and Bernie was like kind of a guy for the silent majority and for the working people,
Mm,
and he got sacked and killed basically politically by Hillary Clinton in her hawkish like strive for power,
right.
and so it's like that was when, that was the beginning of the end of the Democrats, as far as we know it,
Yeah,
because like,
agreed.
Bernie would have been the obvious choice, in terms of, you know, a true candidate for a better future, right? But so
Well, he
it's
would
like
have brought in the
it
right
was like
kind
a
of social reform.
self-sabotaging movement,
Hmm.
from Clinton and the establishment in that way, you
Yep.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Yeah,
somebody like Robert Kennedy who's kind of has authenticity, which is kind of rare in politics because most of them are just talking heads, right? And most of them are just they're sort of empty suits, most of them. Then you get a rare guy who has a bit of authenticity, and people are like, oh. So I think yes, killing Bernie, what that did was brought all the working class over to Trump, and then that's like a total cognitive dissonance because Trump is supposed to be the uber capitalist, a villain. He's supposed to be the bad guy. And what's happening? Oh, why are we identifying with Trump? What's going on here? That's like, so the arc of history is like, yeah, you're right. You kill you kill the genuine working class guy, or the guy who's right really concerned with real social issues and wants to do something about it and has popular grassroots support. You kill that person and bring in a kind of centrist, kind of professional politician who stinks of inauthenticity, and then the shadow of that is Trump. Trump arises as this sort of villain, clownish kind of trickster figure and hijacks the whole process, and then and appeals to all those people who are fed up with Clinton and fed up with the whole establishment. And then this one, the kind of like this one, he's got the center. That's why he won. He got the center. He didn't get the extremist weirdos. He's won over the center, Trump. So he's more of a centrist politician than a right winger at the moment. It appeared to me, which is a switch from who he was supposed to be and who he's been portrayed as being and who he's been. So I don't know. I'm
I'm
not.
still struggling. I'm struggling a bit when you describe him as being a trickster figure. I know where you're coming from with this, but
Yeah.
it's like, when I look at, the events of, let's say, the last 2 years, it's like, or just, looking at, CNN when they describe that the, comeback of Trump is the most, profound historical comeback. It's like that even surpassed, Nixon. So it's like, and then you see, the picture when he, survived this assassination attempt, and he puts his fist in the air, and the Secret Service people like rushing in on him, and behind him the flag. These are like archetypal images that are not just trickster. That's
No, no,
like
no.
there's way more, comeback mythology and heroism embedded in these events and pictures than being just like a trickster.
You're misunderstanding me, Tom. The trickster becomes the savior in archetypology, right? So yes, I agree with you totally. The trickster figure in Carl Jung, as he talks about, there's this whole chapter in his book on archetypes where the trickster actually becomes the savior, becomes the hero.
Right.
So yes, he's made that
No, that makes sense.
transformation from trickster into hero in terms of into even I don't think even consciously, you know.
No, obviously not.
It just happened. It's not like
No, nobody
it's not
can
even
do this.
his
I mean,
doing, you know. It's not like I want to say he's a great guy or anything. He's obviously not a great guy. He's kind of a mediocre guy, right? He's kind of a
no, but we're talking about, societal and subconscious processes, and nobody, can choose an archetype for themselves. These are things that are happen,
yeah.
like a swarm phenomenon. And it's like, there is some, it's like as if the American, history, it's talking with itself, through these images, through these kind of events. It's like
Mm.
find a similar picture for the Democrats, that are that powerful at the moment, and you don't find it.
No, they don't have the archetype with they're not they're not possessed by the archetype. They're possessed by a sort of malevolence or hypocrisy. They're possessed by a negative archetype,
I
maybe.
saw actually like a meme. You remember like the mouth of Sauron, from the
Mm.
Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, yeah,
You,
yeah.
you remember the figure without the lips and with these big teeth?
Hmm.
And so it was like a meme where that was like, put next to Kamala Harris, big smile. And it's like there's some, alluding to some kind of malevolence,
Yeah.
like just being a speaking, what do you say, like a mouthpiece of some, evil forces behind them.
Yeah,
And it's
but
like, hmm?
well, I have a but there. I don't think Kamala Harris is extremely malevolent or a
No,
terrible
but we're talking
person.
about images. We're
She
talking
might
about,
actually, but that's what I'm saying. When there's a difference between, let's say, the archetype and the person, is what I'm getting at. So yes, that's what possesses her. She's been possessed by the demonic, force in some level. But she might be just a fine, she's
Oh,
obvious.
not
Like,
talking about
okay,
her
I know
persona.
she's everybody. She's always just. She might not be as stupid as everybody imagines. She's obviously very, a good at her job, and she might be a nice person. It doesn't matter. None of that matters, right? Because that's not what's happening.
No, no, no,
What's
no, no. I'm
happening
not
is the
talking about the
archetypes
personal
are
level.
taking over people here and there, and
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
archetypes are going on, and doesn't all whatever anybody says about somebody's personality is kind of on one level quite irrelevant.
Yeah, yeah, no, we're not talking about the personal level.
Yeah.
It's like the same thing as if you see an interview with any actor, and then you can infer things about their personality, and then you forget, oh no, they're actors. They just present something for the
Mm.
interview. It's like there's no way that you can infer something from the interviews about the personality of Harris or Trump or whatever, because it's just entertainment. It's like infotainment. It's a projected, profile building act that they present to the world.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about Trump. Uh, in the beginning, he was a reality TV star. That was the cutting edge of entertainment at that moment, and he was always an entertainer on some level. I don't even think he was that good of a businessman, right? People say that he just lost money all the time. It didn't matter whether he was a good businessman or a bad businessman. He was an entertainer. He was a he was able to play an audience. He was able to make people hate him and love him, and so it's kind of interesting that the reality TV guy, which all of the intelligentsia would, you know, be snobby against because it's reality TV, and reality TV is like the lowest of the low in culture, right? So that's the thing. He comes from the kind of the scumbag of the low of culture. He's like, and that rises up to be king. It's amazing. It's an amazing archetypal kind of like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
movement. The scumbag of the scumbag is now the great hero. It's completely insane.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's what I mean with Siegfried, who pulls or whoever pulls the sword out of the stone. It's like always the trickster that nobody takes seriously, but he is able to wield the power, and he doesn't flinch, you know. And
Yeah, he
that's
doesn't
or
flinch, and there he is.
Arteschlager or
He got
whatever.
he's fist pumping when he's just been shot, and these are outrageous things that are happening. Like he could have half an inch and his head would have been blown off, but he survived that. It's we're living in a strange dream of a mythological world. We're not living in the world of facts and science and all this shit. It's like we're
Yeah, it's
living
a
in a
Lynchian world.
we're living in a world of wild and implausible dreams.
No, no, but we're living in a Lynchian world. It's like it's a far better way to understand what's going on, to look at the Lynchian glasses than to look at the glasses of like, pompous, rationalistic media narratives, that's presented by CNN and all the other kind of things. No, just look at, through a Lynchian kind of way, as if it were a dream. What does it mean? Like if
Mhm.
everything that would have been a dream, it's like there's a symbolism behind all of this, you know?
Yeah, 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 yeah. There's the movement. There's um again, it's like again this is again why religion is coming back, because people are realizing that it doesn't matter what kind of religion, good religion, bad religion, cults, and but but that's the world we're living in. We're not living in a world that you can a mechanistic um or even a quantum or anything that has to do with just what you can analyze in terms of in your microscope, is not that's not real. What's
I
real
mean,
is
just to come back to, archetypal images, and fascism, because it's like if you just take this image, him, with blood on his face and putting his fist in the air, and it's like compare that with images of Hitler. these archetypal images where he stands in his uniform and makes, the Hitler greeting, with all the military. It's like these are two different things entirely.
Oh yeah, because he was shot, and whereas Hitler was surrounded by the SS,
Yeah, but
and
this is to being shot and to survive, and this is like a positive hero archetype, whereas like Hitler wasn't. There's no similar image like constructive positivist survival story and comeback story that is depicted in a picture like this. These are completely different archetypes, and so I think just the label being a fascist, it doesn't apply just on no level, like neither on the mythological level, nor the archetypal level, nor the historical level. It doesn't add up,
no,
to label him
yeah,
fascist or Nazi. That doesn't make any sense.
no, because because he's kind of hilarious. You know, he kind of like he's got a sense of humor. You can't be a fascist dictator if you have a sense of humor. I mean,
Well, Hitler had apparently a lot of humor when he was, he was
was he
very.
really was he actually
Nobody was
funny?
very relatable, and it's like the people that encountered him in private settings, he wasn't,
But
he
Trump's
wasn't
not
that.
relatable. He's
I'm just
obnoxious.
no, but we're talking about Hitler now.
I know,
Because
but I'm talking about
but
Trump.
you were saying like Hitler wasn't, humorous like Hitler was very relatable, when he was like, in private.
No, different things. Because Hitler was relatable. Trump is not relatable. He's an extraterrestrial. He makes weird, funny jokes that don't make sense, Like,
Yeah, maybe.
that's the difference. He's a goofball, right? Whereas you're saying Hitler had a certain kind of charm. I don't see much charm in Trump, do you? I think he's got no charm. He's a bumptious
No, yes,
ass.
that's true. Yeah, you're right.
He has
Mhm.
zero charm.
Yeah.
Just another interesting thing. And that's why I'm starting to like him. It's weird.
Oh,
To
well, it's like a
even
little bit
say
like
that,
Bush, W. Bush. It's like no charm, a little bit of a goofball. It's like it's not that dissimilar, you know.
W. Bush. No, it is because Trump is an entertainer at the same time, whereas Bush has no theatrical.
No, but Bush was also a goofball with his, weird things of pronouncing words and his, weird
Yeah,
press
I see.
conferences.
I guess maybe there's a connection, but I think if I was thinking of like Shakespearean characters, I would say I put Bush as like a lower on a lower level than Trump. He's just a bit more. He was kind of stupid, was like but but Trump is a beast of some kind.
No,
He's
but
literally
no, W was like a proper war hawk also.
yeah.
And so, but I think in terms of IQ, they don't differ that much. I
Oh,
would.
okay. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. But then what if Trump is not a war hawk? What if?
No,
What
no,
if this
he's
guy
not.
that you're a
Apparently,
fascist
he's
is?
not.
What if he actually manages to deal with some of the wars that are going? What if that happens? Oh, that's just going to fuck up all of the progressives, vision of the world completely. It's like that's cognitive dissonance because I thought this guy was like the bad patriarch, the bad daddy, the worst person in the world. And what if he turns out to be somebody different? Oh my God. It's so strange, right? The
Yeah.
whole arc of his career and who he is now and what's going on. And um
Yeah, he's not invading anybody, or he hasn't, and he w won't. That's the weird thing. It's like it's a similar. It's
we'll
like
see.
it was a little bit like if you look at Nixon actually, and Nixon was very bad in terms of inner politics, but he was very good in foreign policy. So he opened the contact to China, and he wasn't really starting any wars, and so in that sense. It's like very similar to Trump because Trump is I don't know how good he is actually with internal politics, but he's not bad. He's certainly better than the Democrats in terms of foreign politics.
Yeah.
So
I mean, he's not that honest. you know. He could be like Nixon in that way. He's kind of a liar, and but then he's almost like he's more a more open liar than the other guys. Like it's weird how not a politician he is, or at least how he comes from not the political world at all. Like it's weird how he becomes from the world of entertainment, and he comes from the world of real estate and business, but he doesn't really come from the political world. Like that's a weird thing, and yet he's the political guy.
There's one thing, Andrew, that I was thinking about, because, Nicholas Taleb, he was kind of, he wasn't openly endorsing Trump, but he was kind of alluding to it. And there's like a
Mhm.
passage in one of his book that was very interesting. And so he talks about trust. And in this, it was it anti-fragility, I don't know, like one of these books. And so he talks about, so you have a choice, you have to go to a doctor, right? And one
Yeah,
of the doctor is like 40 years old, and he's like one of these New York kind of guys with shiny teeth and all cut and and looks good and like a great looking doctor. And then you have a doctor who's like 50 and he looks like very bad and like with bad frizzly hair and bad skin and like bad posture. To which one would you go? And he said the majority of the people would go to the latter because, you would assume that the latter, the not so good looking one, that didn't come from a good family and had to invest way more into good education and had to overcome way more obstacles. And the same thing is true for Trump, because it's like he's an open liar. He's not hiding behind a beautiful democratic facade of good, striking a good figure and having a good suit. And it's like it's weird. So it's like people know exactly where he's coming from because his lies are so obvious. Where the
yeah,
lies from the Democrats and it's like are not that obvious. But of course they're lying. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah. Well, he's playing a game like a businessman would. He's playing a different game than the rest of them. And I guess people are so sick of that game that standard politicians were playing. They find it kind of refreshing that he's playing a different kind of game. Um, yeah, and I'm very surprised, to hear myself even saying that, but it's kind of interesting how things kind of like how your vision of something is sort of evolves and changes over time, and you and a person as well.
I mean, for me, the moment when I realized that Trump has an actual chance of winning was when, the podcast Red Scare with, it's like from the dirt left, what is it like?
You call it the dirtbag life. I don't know this
Third
guy.
back left.
Yeah, I've
And
heard
so,
of him.
yes, and so they were like coming up as, a hardcore socialist. And then, now they're like openly voting and endorsing Trump. And it's like, okay, there's some change in atmosphere here going on when these people start to look behind of the mechanisms of the Democrats and progressives and start to endorse Trump. Then something really interesting is happening, and so. I did that. I think that did a lot for Trump. That they did it. You know the podcast, the Red Scare podcast,
No, I don't listen to it, but I, yeah,
but you're
but
aware that it exists.
well, I just think that for me, it's like that he's on Rogan, and that she refused to go on Rogan means okay, she doesn't really have any connection to
Yeah,
but what's going on in culture. You don't even have to like Rogan, but if you were a smart political person, you would go on all the podcasts because that's where people get their information, not the New York Times, right? Obviously,
yeah,
it's like so obvious. It's like it's such an obvious gaffe, right?
yeah. That's
To
true.
not go on Joe Rogan podcast. If she had, that's the first thing she should have done, right?
Yeah,
She should have gone on Joe Rogan and talked to Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan's the most popular podcaster in the world, and podcasts are how people get their information today. But why didn't they think of that? Why did she refuse Joe Rogan? Obviously, not very intelligent politics
yeah,
going
exactly.
on there. It's quite simple. Like in that sense, it's like look for where the media is. Where's the media right now? Okay, so you've got to try to conquer the podcast network. You got to try to conquer social media. You got to. You know,
Yeah,
it's
no,
it's
exactly.
just
No, it's a very
it's
good
very
observation.
she could
Yes.
have won if she had the right advisors, I would say.
Yeah, but
Uh,
again, psychoanalytically speaking, I think she didn't want to win.
I
And
think
the
the culture
Democrats
didn't want her to win, basically. I think the culture wanted the Democrats to be fully and totally crushed and defeated because they need to be fully and totally crushed and defeated if they're ever going to come back and be something of any significance.
also what you say, but I also, from again from the psychoanalytical viewpoint, you could assume from the results that they didn't want to win in the first place, the
Mhm.
Democrat Party, because of whatever, but they didn't want to. Otherwise, their whole strategy and their selection of candidates would have been completely different in their method, but they didn't. And so, like a psychoanalysis, like confronted with with that kind of thing, would just say no, they didn't want to.
Yeah,
That's it.
because they were making every possible mistake you could make, and they were playing every cynical move they could make, and you know, they were out of touch. Yeah, obviously. Um, it's very clear. So these people have to get out of their bubbles. They have to get out of their elite bubbles. They have to go and, talk to a normal person. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know. Get out of your intelligentsia, and because that was one of the big things that I've heard people say. Oh, people who vote for Trump, they have low IQ and all that sort of thing, and they're that's it's very stupid. It's very, very stupid and condescending, the behavior of these folks. So again, it seemed to me kind of like, oh, obviously it was Trump would win. Based, you just listen to how, if you want to know who's going to win in politics, go to the New York Times, read the New York Times, just look at who they're blabbing about. Like, for example, one lady
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
New
you
York
said
Times said,
that.
this is a election is between men and women. Like, fuck off, okay? It's not between men and women. You know what I mean? Like, you're so out of touch. Uh, you know, there's almost nothing you could add to that. You just have to read that in the New York Times. And
Yeah.
that these people these people are on another planet. They're not, they don't know what's going on at all, and they're just shooting themselves in the foot every day, like, you know so yeah, hopefully. Yeah, this is the best news ever for the Democratic Party. I love my thesis here. I hope somebody else writes this thesis up better than me, but say, great news for the Democratic Party, Trump won.